Now, there's a discourse of exclusion and inclusion. So magic is a dynamic social construct. Magic is a social construct that's found in lots of cultures. We're not looking at one thing that exists on its own and is found in different cultures. We're looking at different types of magic all over the place that are similar. It is not that there is one essential thing that is magic that is expressed in all these cultures. Now, when people use the word magic, it's often been used to denigrate the other. This is the so-called discourse of exclusion, whether that is the other of other groups or the other within, i.e. women. So think of it this way. When a Protestant says that Mormons are magic practitioners, that's to denigrate them. When women are accused of doing secret magic against their husbands, that's to degenerate them. Magic is an accusation that uses social control if it's from the discourse of exclusion. However, when we're looking at discourse of exclusion, we're not looking at specific data on magic, but we're looking at the views of authoritative people about magic, usually to denigrate someone else. A discourse of inclusion would be different. And I'm really interested. This is what we're going to do as a discourse of inclusion in this course. We are looking to see what people do and what they say they do and not judge them as being bad in any way. They are we're looking at people who self-identify as users of magic in one way or another. And we're exploring what those folk do or conceive of what they do. So that's the discourse of exclusion and inclusion. I know, it's a lot. Don't worry, we're almost done. So magic, Radcliffe Edmonds argues, is non-normative. It's like an alternate authority. And I actually don't think it's as much non-normal as that it has a different notion of authority. Whereas a Christian would look to the Pope, the magician would look to his magical teacher. Whereas a Christian would look to the Bible, the magician would look to a grimoire. Grimoire is a book of spells from the French word grammaire. So magic is often described as that which is not real science and that which is not real religion. Science and religion is a common distinction, but the science of different cultures are different, as are the notions of material and immaterial. Science and religions are claimed that something is not normative. This is normal. This is science. This is religion. This is going to church. This is understanding the laws of physics. They're normal. Magic is non-normative because it has a different sense of authority. The authority will be, I did it and it works, or the book said that, this book that nobody else recognizes, or I found this secret method. Usually the big thing for magic, whether magic is authoritative or not, is it works. So think of magic as having a different type of authority in all these situations. Okay, and here we've got a great quote by Radcliffe Edmonds. Someone who stitches up a cut or who goes into a temple to make a prayer is seen as acting in a normal or expected way, making use of normal scientific or religious patterns of action. By contrast, someone who cuts the throat of a puppy and burns it on a tombstone in the middle of the night is engaging in non-normative religious behavior, also high weirdness. Just as someone who smears the wound with a paste made from the wrappings of an Egyptian mummy, powdered rhino horn, and the intestines of a frog is engaged in non-normative scientific activity. It's an operation of science, but it's not the normal type of science. Both such actions might well be labeled magic by an observer. But whereas a modern observer would draw the distinction between science and religion, an ancient one would simply characterize both actions as abnormal. We are going to call them all as normal. We are going to take a different set of authority. Normal depends on the culture. I would argue that what separates magic from other actions is the weirdness and the powerful substances and actions used. The non-normative, by doing something in a different way, is freighted with the extraordinary, either in a dangerous way or a powerful way. We do these types of weird rituals because they're powerful. Why are they powerful? Often because they're non-intuitive or non-normative. All right, here's my closing remarks. Religious studies is a non-normative, descriptive method to study stuff deemed religious. What are we doing in religious studies? We're not positing normative or prescriptive. We're describing things. And what are the things we're describing? One could say we're describing religious things, but I would take it a step further. We are describing things that people deem religious. So we're not looking at anything that is inherently religious or not. We're looking to, does someone call this religious? If someone calls it religious, it's religious. So that's what we'll look at. Religious studies is a non-normative descriptive method to study stuff deemed religious. 2, magic is the manipulation of religious cultural items and methods towards individual or small or pragmatic ends. Magic is ritual to change the world according to one's desires. Magic uses set up methods in religion. It uses scriptures, it uses invocations, it uses liturgy, it uses all of this stuff, but it uses it in a magical way to do small scale, individual, pragmatic things. Definitions from definitions of religion and magic ought to arise from the data, from the stuff we're looking at. We reverse engineer our definitions and constantly alter our definitions by looking at more and more data. We figure out what magic is by looking at a lot of magic rituals. And the more magic rituals we read, the more we can understand what a magic ritual is. So instead of saying magic is this and then going and cherry picking data to prove that point, we'll say magic is this, then study a lot of things and see if our hypothesis about what magic is still works. It probably won't. It needs to constantly be nuanced and played with. You constantly got to work on that bike. All right. Magic has discourses of exclusion and discourses of inclusion that shape the data. So if I'm looking at the Malefactus Maleficatorum, which is an exclusion text, it's about the behaviors and signs of witches that was used in the witch burnings. That would be discourse of exclusion. Discourse of inclusion is a book of spells. Like, yeah, do this thing, this happens, and there's nothing wrong with it. So we want to look at inclusion as much as possible, but be aware of the rhetoric of exclusion, what that tells us about social history. Finally, magic is an alternate notion of authority and the authoritative. We have the orthodox, the straight thinking, like an orthodontist makes your teeth straight, and the orthopraxis, praxis meaning practice. So the correct practice and the correct thinking are orthodox and orthoprax. Magic has a different notion of authority. It says what is right and wrong based on completely different things. It sets out behaviors based on completely different sources. Okay, it's over. So we're moving into the next class. I want you to think about how people use the term magic. Where do you hear it around you? What do you see on TV? What do you hear in your daily life? What does ritual mean to you? I mean, we've talked a lot about ritual today, but what are rituals? You know, rituals ranging from the Catholic Mass to the ritual of throwing salt over your shoulder if you spill it. So that's a superstition, or as I would call it, a technology for living in the world. Where do you locate religion in your world? Not necessarily are you a religious person or not, but how do you see religion operating? Do you know anybody that practices magic rituals? Do you practice magic rituals? I'm sure there's a few of them out there. All right. That was a fun first day, a lot of information. We'll scale it back. All this is going to come back. I just want to give you an overview of where we're going. All right. I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye now.